to start, if you could take your seats. Thank you all so much for being here today. I am Jim Coleman, Senator Ball's Chief of Staff, and it is a pleasure to have our new Commissioner of Homeland Security here today, Jerry Hauer. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Commissioner. This day would not have happened without the leadership and commitment to Homeland Security, the Chairman of Homeland Security, Senator Greg Ball. Give him a round of applause. We've got a full agenda here today, and Senator Ball wanted to bring everyone together first to meet our new commissioner, as well as to give each of you, especially our chiefs of police, chiefs of fire, our county executives, our township supervisors, the opportunity to share feedback with the commissioner and with the senator about your plans for emergency preparedness, as well as your needs for training and development. We also want to thank our host here today, the Paladine crew. Are they here? Raise your hands if you're with Paladine. Felix Carcano. This is a wonderful facility, and we're very pleased to be able to have this exciting meeting here today. I also want to let you in on a great secret. The commissioner's already said that this will not be his last meeting here, so that is just wonderful. We are pleased to have him here. I want to now move into introducing Senator Greg Ball. As you know, he was a two-term assemblyman, fought like crazy for us in the 90th District. He is now the senator for the 40th District. He's the chairman of Homeland Security. He's had a marvelous first session in helping to control spending and reducing taxes and fighting for the needs of first responders and making sure that we're safe here in New York. Let's give Senator Greg Ball another round of applause and thank him for being here. Senator Ball.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Jim Coleman, the real senator, gets it all done. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please, just a moment of silence for all of those who serve, continue to serve, and that we have lost. Thank you so much. Jim, I think we'd like to introduce Bob Buckley. Bob heads up, chairs my Law Enforcement Advisory Council. If Bob, you wouldn't mind come forward and just saying a few brief words, and thank you for all of you who serve on the Advisory Council for helping us pull this together. Thanks so much for your leadership, Bob.
Thank you very much. Senator Ball, thank you very much. Commissioner, on behalf of the Senators Law Enforcement Advisory Committee, I want to welcome you. And on behalf of everybody here, I really say we appreciate you coming down here to meet with us and hear our concerns. So I publicly want to say thank you, and I think we should give the senator and the commissioner a big hand because this is precedent setting that they both come together and try to do the right thing for the first responders. So let's give them a hand, everybody. I won't say a long speech. I wasn't prepared for this. Jim did a good job introducing. As you see, you have basically the first responders from throughout, not only Senator Greg Ball's 40th Senate District, but throughout the entire region. You got a lot of knowledge and a lot of people here with a lot of information, and I think hopefully we can relate to you what our needs and concerns are. Senator Ball will serve as obviously our liaison with the you, Mr. Commissioner, and hopefully you can help us do what we got to do as being the first county north of, first and second counties north of New York City with Westchester, Putnam, and all the other counties who really are right in the mix when you think of 9/11 and being right outside as a main target of potentially terrorism in this area. So thank you for being here. Thank you for hearing what we have to say, and welcome everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Let's give it up for Bob Buckley again, an incredible leader, chairman of our Homeland Security and Law Enforcement Advisory Council. Well, I now want to move into introducing our guest. His name is Jerry Hauer, and he is a friend to first responders. He has got a 30-year career in Homeland Security. He's worked for 2 presidents. He's worked for 2 governors. He's now our Commissioner of Homeland Security. He is an expert on the international level, as well as, of course, on the national level. He is an absolute expert and a professional, and he is highly responsive. He answers his phone every single time I call on the first call, and that says a lot for someone who is as busy as he is. His goal is to make sure that He's out listening to each of you so that we can all work together in a very collaborative manner to be able to protect all of our citizens. He has worked also in Washington, D.C., where he worked before he became the commissioner, and he's had several executive roles in Homeland Security as well as with a host of other major departments in Washington, D.C. Let's give him also another round of applause before he shares his comments, and then we'll move right into his comments. Let's give him a round of applause. And thank you so much for being here, Mr. Commissioner. I think Krista Gobins is our legislative director. Let's give it up for Krista because she's done a marvelous job of getting you all here. This is her show. Thank you, Krista, for your hard work. Mr. Commissioner, is the mic working?
I think it is.
Great. It's your show. Thank you so much.
Jim, thank you very much. After Jim's introduction, I don't need to say anything, so he said it all for me. First of all, I want to thank the Senator for inviting me here today. It's an honor to be with the Senator. He's shown enormous leadership on the Homeland Security Committee, and I certainly appreciate him putting this together. As many of you know, I've been a first responder. I've been in the trenches. Please excuse my voice. I'm having a problem with one of my vocal cords. My wife loves it. She says the less I talk, the better it is. But I've been in the trenches. I've done this with you. I've done it for a long time. I started in 1969. The Commissioner of Health yesterday, when I was talking with him, and I told him when I started, reminded me that he wasn't even born back then, which made me feel wonderful. But I understand a lot of the concerns of the first responder community, both on the law enforcement side and on the fire EMS side. I've been involved with public safety, as Jim said, at the local level, having worked, I don't know how many of you know, but I spent almost 6.5 years in Indiana, where we had 92 counties. I oversaw the public safety agencies, except state police, but the superintendent out there and I became very good friends. I was out in the counties. We had disasters of every magnitude, from earthquakes to floods to tornadoes to chemical spills. I was part of the Ridgefield, Connecticut hazardous materials team. I was a volunteer firefighter in Ridgefield, Connecticut. I pulled hose in the middle of blizzards and up mountainsides. I know what it's like. Can't do it anymore, but one of the things I can do is try and help you get your job done and support you as you move forward in these jobs. Your job changes every day. The threats that you confront every day are dynamic. I was saying earlier on when the Senator and I were talking with the media that you might not be the primary target of an incident, but anyone that wants to do harm to New York City is more likely to put together whatever nefarious kind of act out here as opposed to New York City, where it's more difficult to hide things. And if things go wrong, or if you detect them up here, you're going to be the ones that are called on to respond to those kinds of threats. You deal with trains, you deal with aviation. All of those are enormous targets. At the end of the day, there is not a lot of difference. You might not do 100,000 runs a year or 400,000 runs a year, but you're busy. Particularly the volunteers pose a unique threat or a new unique challenge in that, and I was talking with the Senator about this, I want to ensure the state is doing everything possible to retain
and to recruit volunteers, because it becomes more and more difficult in the tough economic environment, although the governor is going to change that, as he said in the State of the State. But we are seeing countrywide the challenge that volunteers face in trying to work two jobs, maintain certification as either an EMT or a paramedic or a firefighter, and I want to ensure that we're not doing things to prevent volunteers from staying as volunteers. With me today is the State Fire Administrator, Brian Stevens, and I've got a few members. Here's Brian, and he's free to answer any questions you have. I've also got a couple members of law enforcement from my staff, Major Dan Conley from the State Police, Jim Horton, a former state trooper who's now overseeing our public safety group, and Lou Valenti, who's a former Albany cop. Lou spent most of his career in Albany and in one of the cities just outside of the city of Albany, but in Albany County. What we try and do is balance everything we do between law enforcement and police, fire. There are no conflicts. You know, I spent a good part of my career in New York City. I see those conflicts. I had to deal with them. I was a referee for many years under Rudy in trying to resolve the conflicts. I don't see them as much when I get outside of New York. Obviously, you get a knucklehead every now and then in a local department. That's part of any department. But the team I have around me, from Brian to Dan to Jim and Lou, we work as a team, and one of the roles and one of the goals that I've got is the agency continues to evolve. The agency in its current form is only about a year old, and it's not had a full-time non-acting commissioner. One of my goals is to ensure that there's a seamless integration of all these functions, and that includes law enforcement. I just got an email this morning from the IAFC about intelligence needs for firefighters. And one of the things that Dan and Jim try and do, and Bryant as well, is trying to assess what comes out of law enforcement, because we are not a law enforcement agency. We leave that to the state police. We are a user of intelligence. So we're trying to make sure that the intelligence we get is moved out to first responders in the local communities, both police, fire, and EMS. So with that in mind, my goal is to try and make your job as easy as possible. My goal is to listen to you, try and address your concerns. As Jim said, I will be back to this center to meet with the community, meet with the local responders, to figure out how we can make this a resource to you at the local level and as a more regional resource to first responders everywhere. So again, I'll turn it back to Senator Ball. Senator, I really do appreciate your inviting me here today. I appreciate your leadership in putting this together and your leadership on the Homeland Security Committee.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll get started. What we're going to do, if you take a look at the agenda, if you have one, we are going to tighten it up. The commissioner has to get out of here at an expedited time frame, so we're looking at 11:30. So I just asked that Kristen and Jim give me 15 minutes before that. What I would like to do is go around the room. Everybody just say your name and then where you're from, what unit you represent, and then we'll just open it up to question and answers. I ask that be polite, but let's make this a constructive dialogue. If you have deliverable items, things that you're worried about, fears that you have,
They're certainly not probably going to get hashed out and fixed today, but let's actually talk about them and develop a list of deliverables. You know, I'll say this: I haven't been in Albany for a long time, and that's a very good thing. But in the time that I had been in Albany, there have been a few governors that have come through, and this governor has possessed an uncanny ability to navigate through the travesty and what used to be the dysfunction of Albany, and to get things done. And one of the reasons why he seems to have been able to do that is he puts the exact right people in the exact right position. And in this gentleman, you have a commissioner who is perfectly situated. And I think of the natural disasters that we just went through, we saw a window of where we can do better and where we can provide more support. And this governor saw that as well, because he rolled up his sleeves and he went to the communities and he visited the communities. But if you look at the Homeland Security team, and I was with Mayor Bloomberg and Kelly last night down in the city, if you look at your federal reps, Congressman Peter King, who, believe me, I know I sleep better at night knowing that he's heading up the efforts at a federal level, and you look at this governor, you look at the mayor's team, and now this new commissioner, we are perfectly situated to accomplish a great deal moving forward. So without further ado, we'll start with Bob, because he looks like he's about to fall asleep. You can introduce yourself in unit, and then we'll go to his right and all the way around.
Is this on? Ooh.
I assure you, Senator, I'm not falling asleep. I'm paying much attention to what both these have to say. And again, we appreciate you being here. As I said, I chair the Senator's Law Enforcement Advisory Committee and the Public Protection Advisory Council. And I don't really have a question for you, Mr. Commissioner. Again, I just want to thank you for being here. Besides information, I guess at some point, maybe you can discuss at some point what other things you can help for the first responders in the district. I mean, information, obviously, knowledge is power, but is there anything else that we can come to you for through the Senator, and in which ways can you help us? Maybe you can just expand on that a little bit as far as, what's available to your department when you get the opportunity. You don't have to do it right now after you work through the rule. Maybe accumulate the questions.
Yeah, what we'll do is that if everybody can just introduce themselves, give the unit, and then we'll open it up to questions and go back and forth.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
And Senator, again, I really want to thank you for working in a nonpartisan fashion with the governor here and putting politics aside and putting the people first and the people in your district first. And I want to publicly say thank you for that.
Thank you, Bob. It's been a pleasure.
Good morning. My name is Keith Cameron with the Westchester County Department of Corrections Emergency Services Unit and here with the Superior Officers Association.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lieutenant Thomas Phelan. I am the president of the Captain Lieutenants and Sergeants Association of the Yonkers Police Department. And I'd like to introduce our new commissioner, Charles Gardner, and I'll defer questions to him because he's smarter than I am and he's outranks me. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Billy Stavisky. I'm the treasurer of the New York State Troopers PBA, treasurer of the National Troopers Coalition, and also the legislative director of Senator Ball's Law Enforcement Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
Good morning. General Foley, commander of New York State Guard.
My name is Ed Beeben. I work for Marine Corps Syscom in the Chem Bio arena.
Sergeant David Novick, Town of Bedford Police Department.
Bill Hayes, Chief of Police, Town of Bedford. Paul Criazzo, Lieutenant with the Mamaroneck Town Police Department.
Steve Anderson, Chief of Mount Kisco Police Department.
Bill Flood, Supervisor, Town of Amenia.
Chris Klingler, Chief Constable, Town of Amenia.
Don Smith, the Sheriff of Putnam County. Welcome to our county. We're glad to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Pat O'Malley, Putnam County Sheriff's Assistant Jail Administrator.
Sam Freed, I'm with the Paladine Group.
Hi, I'm Les Jacobowitz. My wife was head of emergency response for New Jersey, and we were under the World Trade Center, and I was under both planes when they came down. I'm here representing Putnam County in trying to finance renovations and expansion of this facility.
Ryan Cortine, Town Supervisor, Town of Dover, and a volunteer firefighter and volunteer ambulance driver.
Good morning. My name is Frank Alfonso from Westchester County Correctional Officers Association Executive Board.
Mike Johnson, Chief, Town of Carmel Police, and I, like the Sheriff, welcome you to my town.
Thank you, Chief.
Dennis Murphy, Transcare Operations Manager, Emergency Medical Services.
Robert Stock, Vice President, Transcare Ambulance Service.
Seth Butler, Paramedic Supervisor, Transcare EMS.
James Oliver, Village Brewster Police Department.
John Delgado, Police Chief, Brewster Police Department.
Mike Driscoll, Town of Somers, Westchester County Police Department.
John Hennigan, State Police. I'm the Station Commander of the Somers Barracks.
Doug Larkin, Lieutenant in the State Police.
Eric Gross, Putnam County News Bureau and PIO for the Bureau of Emergency Services.
Richard Wells, President, Police Conference of New York.
Robert Morris, Vice President of the Port Authority, PBA.
I'm Chuck Gardner, Police Commissioner for the City of Yonkers. Lou Alagno, Chief, Town of Mount Pleasant Police and President, Westchester County Police Chiefs Association.
John Kerwick, MTA Police. I supervise the 50 explosive K-9 teams that we work with throughout the region, and on behalf of all of them, thank you for coming down here.
Chief Jerry Schrammick, Putnam County Sheriff's Office.
Gene Tumalo, Chief of Police, City of Peekskill. Eric Johansson, Lieutenant, City of Peekskill.
Deputy Chief Frank Sylvester. I'm with the Village of Ossining Volunteer Fire Department, and I'm presently the President of the New York State Association of Fire Chiefs.
Tom Kennedy, New York State Association of Fire Chiefs.
Rich Finn, Town of Yorktown Police Department.
Bob Noble, Lieutenant, Town of the Yorktown Police Department.
Okay, so let's open it up and have a dialogue and help me keep on, let's just keep the dialogue going so just on time. Think about that when you frame your question. Who wants to go first? Okay, we all go home. Ryan? Is it on?
So I think I can project my voice.
It's on.
Thank you.
It's on.
So, like I said, I'm a town supervisor. I'm also a volunteer firefighter and volunteer ambulance driver. And two things I want to bring up. One is training concerns. What I'm hearing from my fellow volunteers is that the state is not really helping us out, in so much as the training requirements are increasing while the training opportunities are decreasing. And really, we're just getting squeezed. And it's making it very difficult.
Where do you get most of your training from? Sorry? Where do you get most of your training from?
Well, we're in the Dutchess County, so fire training, for the most part, takes place out at the county center, but rescue operation training would take place either through NDP, who's a local ambulance company, or just other opportunities that we can find. And the concern I'm hearing lately is EMTs and needing, besides 160 to 190 hours to just become an EMT, it's 72 hours every 3 years. And again, obviously we want first responders to be properly trained, but the hours are increasing while the training opportunities are decreasing. I don't know if that's because of budget cuts. I know, we had trouble filling some positions for officers because in our fire company we have pretty stringent requirements that you need to have these classes in order to be a lieutenant, and then you need to have these classes to be a captain, and then these classes. And some people just couldn't run because they haven't offered the class in years. So training's definitely a concern. And then also, I guess, as a town supervisor, looking at the money side of this, if our volunteer rescue squad, which takes care of the town from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. 7 days a week, if that folds, we are going to have to expend an extra $250,000 to go to a 24-hour paid service. So everybody's taxes are going to increase. And if you look at the state law in terms of the benefits that volunteers can receive through property tax assessment, it's somewhat negligible. In talking to some people, they say it's almost not worth the paperwork, and not too many communities do it. As I'm seeing it, if we had the ability to offer, something significant, $1,000 property tax abatement for 50 volunteers, that's $50,000 that wouldn't come in as taxes, but we would save $250,000 not having to have a full-time paid ambulance squad. Or, eventually what might be coming is that we'll need to have paid firefighters and a paid fire system in Dover. Again, now we're talking $500,000 to $1 million a year. So the little bit of money that could go out to volunteers who, part of the problem I'm seeing is the pride that fire companies, rescue squads have is also a hindrance in that they don't ask. So I guess I'm here to ask that these are the things that are really hurting. So.
As I, said in my opening remarks, one of the big problems is retention. And while EMS is not part of our agencies, I'm not one of those people that says it's not my backyard. I'm going to find out. I'll talk with Dr. Shah because EMS requirements fall under the Department of Health. But I will talk. I saw Nirav last night. I will call him on the way back to Albany, and I will discuss with him the requirements, because if we are putting onerous requirements on EMTs, paramedics are one thing, because most paramedics are not volunteers. There's very few. But for the volunteer EMTs, they're the backbone of a lot of communities. And if we are increasing the requirements and not offering the training, then we've got a problem at the state level. So that's something I will address, and I will get back to the senator on that. And the senator's staff will, I'm sure, get back to you.
Great.
Brian, did you, anything, let me ask Brian to.
As you know, we coordinate through with the county fire coordinators to allow the schedule. So certainly we'll reach out to the coordinators and make sure that, see if there's any holes or challenges they have in meeting the need. The training hour allocations in the past couple of years have been adequate. It seems to have met the needs. Generally what we've seen. There are a few spots, especially in the tech rescue area, that we have some challenges to meet some of those courses that we're working on trying to resolve that. And we just indicated and sent the notice to the coordinators this past week that we still have training hours left for this year. It runs through the fiscal year, so through the end of March we still have a number of hours available. If it's not a dollar issue, if it's instructor availability or some other challenge, we need to know that, okay? So don't be afraid to give us a call or reach out to, we have regional folks in the area, but don't be afraid to contact us and let us know, and let's work through those problems. As we identify them, we resolve them. So certainly we don't want to hinder it. The idea is to get that training available as we can. So let us know.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And just one last point. I mean, again, we're talking about coordination, which is great, but again, we're a fire department, but 2/3 of our calls are ambulance calls.
Sure.
So, I think there needs to be more of that coordination that you're going to be doing. That sounds great.
I will call Nirav about the EMS side. We will resolve the fire side. Right, Brian? Brian's a great guy, and he's doing great things over at the fire office, at the Office of Fire Prevention and Control. Brian's recently been appointed. When you're enacting, it's very difficult to do some things, but he's now in the job. His deputy, Bill Davis, is a great guy. It will get fixed. I can promise you that. And if it's not, my phone number is 518-242. Okay, I'll give you a card.
Okay, thank you.
But
all right.
The last four numbers are 5241, I think. I never call myself, so I got to.
Mr. Commissioner, before we go into the next question, we don't want anyone to feel slighted, and we do have some supervisors who've arrived, as well as key officials for fire or police. Please raise your hand and introduce yourself. I know that Supervisor Grace from Yorktown is here.
So we'll start on this side of the room, go to the left. If everybody can just stand up and introduce themselves.
Michael Grace, Supervisor County Yorktown. Thank
Anybody in the back here want to? No?
I see a lot of uniforms.
We've got Joe Russo back in the back. Joe? Rob Lipman, the mayor of Village of Florence. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm Joe Russo, retired special agent in charge of the Secret Service, now running the Executive Protection Division for a very large company in New York City called Human Protection Resources. We worked with Jim prior to, and certainly remember the commissioners from Louis and Barry and so forth.
Sure, Joe.
Thanks for the invite.
Joe was the special agent in charge for President Clinton's detail. It's good to have you here.
My name's Ed Burns. I'm the chief of the Veterans Affairs Fire Department in Montrose in the town of Portland.
Chief of the Vista Volunteer Fire Department.
Lieutenant Allen Stephen Airy, Town of Kent Police.
Mike Doherty, Carmel Fire.
Ken Schmidt, Supervisor, Town of Carmel. Welcome.
Okay.
Brian Suggs, Chief of Police, Village of Buchanan.
Button Brown, Montville Police. Chief Jewell, Emergency Services, Coordinator, Department of Emergency Services.
Brian Leon, Assistant Chief of the Impact Volunteer Fire Department, and Putnam County and New York State Fire Instructor.
You got a great turn.
Thank you. If we can make sure, Krista and Jim, that we get everybody signed in if they haven't already. Make sure we get all your contact information because we'll follow up on this meeting with some of these deliverable items, okay? So I know the supervisor had a point specifically on retention issues. If anybody wants to follow up on that point, otherwise we'll move on to the next issue. Okay. Sir?
First of all, good morning. Again, thank you for inviting us and providing us this forum to discuss our concerns. To be honest, we're in a unique situation since the border of New York City, in my opinion, is a potential terrorist target in the country. So not only are we concerned with an event that may happen in New York City, we're concerned with the collateral impact of an event that would impact us. So we maintain an ESU, a full-time ESU staff with a tactical team, and one of the concerns that we have is that the DCJS recommended standards for a tactical team are difficult, and it's a financial burden placed upon us in these difficult financial times. We're also concerned whether that would affect our accreditation through the state. So any assistance that you could provide us in funding for maintaining the standards in our tactical teams would be very helpful.
Can you get, if you don't mind, just a few specifics on that point so I can better understand?
Well, the DCJS recommended standards for a tactical team are 16 hours monthly. So we're maintaining a team of about 50 people. It's a significant expense for us. And any assistance that you could provide us with that. You know, we do our own training, but it's the overtime and the personnel costs that are prohibitive in this, financial environment that we're in.
Commissioner, I couldn't agree with you more. If something happens in New York City, people are going to move north. And the senator and I have already talked about this, and one of the things he asked me to look at was how we can prepare to help New York City. But the other part of that is how do we support the counties around New York City, because it's natural for people to want to evacuate in a catastrophic incident. And if they get hit hard, people are going to move out of the city. They're going to want to evacuate, depending on the nature of the incident. And they're going to go to some surrounding communities. That's going to affect law enforcement. It's going to affect hospitals. It's going to affect the fire departments, particularly EMS. It's going to affect sheltering north of the city. All of those are going to become your problems. And we've got to ensure that something happening in the city doesn't bring you to your knees. Now, one of the things that we've already begun to put in place, we met with the MTA chief yesterday, and one of the things he asked for was to have pre-positioned stockpiles of blankets, food, cots, things like that in Long Island, in areas around the state. And I want to take it one step further. I want to have caches available in Long Island and here in the counties north of the city. The city's got a lot of material stockpile. I don't believe we have enough at the state level. So I want to put together stockpiles of not just food and blankets that the MTA can use, but I want to have search and rescue material. I want to have things that will support fire, police, EMS, that's available in case you have to open shelters, in case you have to do evacuations, making sure you have the things necessary. And we are looking at that right. I mean, literally yesterday we had the meeting, and I told my director of emergency management to figure out where we can put a few more stockpiles. So that's already in place. But the funding and the training issue, I will look for. I will look at that, and I will get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Sal, do you anticipate moving forward that within the intelligence community there will be less esoteric in terms of providing regional law enforcement agencies with specific threats? I know we talked often about having watch lists. I don't know how much of that information, I don't think any of us know how many particular threats might be omnipresent in any given community at any place. I understand a lot of this is very sensitive, but do you anticipate to a greater extent now that some of that information will be shared?
Let me answer that in two ways. I read the presidential brief when I worked in Washington every morning for almost 3.5 years. And I got the same brief with the secretary that the president was getting every morning. The CIA came over to the office. We had a briefer assigned. And I can tell you that the number of specific threats was very small. When we get specific threats, usually the NYSEC or the JTTF in New York, which would be most likely to contact you, is supposed to contact you. If they're not, I'm going to ask Dan to look at that. Dan Conley is a major in the state police. He's assigned to my office, but he interfaces with the NYSEC. And if you're not getting information, I'll ask you to talk with Dan. And I know the sensitivity of, there's two issues. One, some of it is just the nature of the federal government not wanting to share. I've been there. I have my own intelligence operation. The deputy director for counterterrorism at the FBI came over to be my assistant secretary, deputy assistant secretary for intelligence and operations. Once he left the bureau, he was able to get things, but they started to wall him off. And this is a guy that ran counterterrorism at the bureau. So that's a problem that we deal with at the federal level. Now, the sharing of information at the NYSEC has been pretty darn good. Dan calls me on a regular basis, or Jamie Ian, my intelligence analyst, with different things. And one of the first questions I ask, has it been shared with the local law enforcement folks? And I can't remember an instance in the last I don't know, 2 months where they've said no. So when something specific comes up that is targeted at an individual or a facility at the local level, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan?
That's correct, sir. And most of the threats, as you mentioned, the general threats that can go down in the form of an advisory from the NICIC. Something specific when we came to the local counterterrorism zone. In this case, counterterrorism zone 3. Chief Jerome, the chair, of course, but the affection of individual areas and contacts directly from the zone with FBI and really a combined effort.
I got to tell you that in all the intelligence I read and all the raw data that I saw from the overnight trafficking, I used to get in at 6:30 to read some of the overnight traffic that came in from the CIA posts around the world, and the number of specific actionable items was really very small. I mean, you know, we got a lot of people surveilling embassies around the globe, or this guy, you know, acting unusual, but the specificity of most of these threats was just not there. So I don't think you're being excluded. It would be irresponsible for specific threats not to come to you. And I will talk with the colonel who runs of NICIC, but Dan's already heard it. And Dan, I'm sure, is going to relay it back to the colonel. The colonel's very good about sharing information. He brings me in the loop on a lot of things, and I just don't see things that, you know, we had one incident, about 2 weeks ago, Dan, where it was specific and it was local, and they did share it with the local law enforcement. But I hear what you're saying, and we will continue to ensure that local law enforcement is brought into the loop quickly.
Okay, we'll continue to go left to right, okay?
Senator, Commissioner, I think we all agree that this region is specifically different than the rest of the state in that we have to respond more than likely to something in New York City, and it's going to have an effect all over the region. I'm going to echo what the Commissioner from Yonkers said about the DCJS standards that have been implemented for the tactical teams. Although the standards are good, they're unattainable by many agencies because of a budget factor. And I think as the Commissioner's worried about his certifications, but I think we're all worried about what it could do as a liability and for training of all the men as well. So if that could be looked
You know what would be helpful for me, so I can talk with DCJS, what part of the standards are most onerous for you?
I think everyone would agree be the hours, training hours and requirements of hours.
On a yearly basis?
It's on a monthly basis.
Monthly,
Yep.
okay, so the 12 hours monthly.
Right, and no one says that that's a bad thing. I think it's just how to make this happen in our economic world that we're in today.
Right.
Yep.
Do you have to do it on overtime?
Some agencies would have to due to manpower issues,
Right,
and some
right.
would not, and that would create a backfill problem also.
Right.
It all comes down to an economic issue. And that's one of my main concerns. The other one is, from a canine and explosive detection point of view, New York State DHS, your office has been very helpful to the community. I represent quite a few of the teams in the lower part of the state, but your agency has brought together all the canine handlers across the state twice a year this past year for the purpose of having a forum something like this and doing some training that we could not do ourselves. For instance, in September, we all went to Oriskany, and we created a typical car bomb of 500 pounds of explosives.
Right.
No one has those assets. We called the FBI, we called the state police. Everyone was very helpful to us, and you hosted that for us. But I think in terms of the whole state, and specifically down here, we need to do more of that.
Well, one of the things I was talking with the folks from the center here prior to the meeting was about doing some rubble pile for canines. I built one in Indiana. It didn't cost a lot of money, but we had dogs come from all over the country do training. It was a small facility, but we were able to do two things: cadaver training, but live search and rescue training. It's more difficult to do live search and rescue training, but we did it. We were able to build a series of tunnels so that people could get in there so their dogs could do live search and rescue training. I want to figure out how to do something like that here.
Well, I think the state's our only resource right now for training. I speak for myself anyhow, not for everybody in the room. The federal agencies are not much help to us. Very little training is offered and very little can be taken. If they are going to do training, it might take years to arrange it to make it happen. A site like this might be very beneficial to us also.
Good. Well, I'm going to, as the senator said and I said, I'll be back here, and we're going to figure out how to do some of that locally. You shouldn't have to go out of state. You should be able to do it right here.
Chief, I'm also pleased to let everyone know that we're going to have a tour starting at about 11:30. And Senator Ball and the Commissioner, and we'll have the representatives from Paladine to help lead us on a very exciting. I think you're going to really be impressed with the tour, what you see.
Just on a point too, all around the room on the whether it be training or funding issues on the federal front, it'd be extremely helpful moving forward, and we'll communicate as a team over the next weeks and months on a list of deliverables to the federal government of how they can better work with our first responders in New York State to make sure that we are properly prepared. And I think we all, from my perspective, I believe at the federal level, unfortunately, the Department of Homeland Security in many instances has become a cash purveyor of dollars going to states and communities at much less risk than, say, whether it be Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., our ports, New York City, the metropolitan region. And I think that one of the opportunities we have is to work across the aisles, pull the congressional delegation together with all the state delegations and the larger law enforcement community to very specifically lobby the federal government for our fair share of funding. And you would, in that, we would have advocates in the city, at the state, and at the federal level, at least within this state. And there is certainly resistance in D.C. To getting that done. So we've got to make sure that we have our act together. So I ask that as deliverable moving forward so we can continue to work together.
Yeah, let me add to that. Pete King's a very close friend. He has been for many years. And I keep in close contact with he and his chief of staff. And when things like this come up, I try and keep Pete in the loop on the needs. And the senator and I can work together. Again, this is not partisan. The senator mentioned this earlier. Disasters don't pick Democrats or Republicans. They hit all of us. I don't ever view this business as partisan. You can't. So I work with everybody and anybody and have for the last 30 years. So your concerns, I will be talking with Pete about this weekend.
Okay, I'll keep going.
I came to this meeting with one thought in mind, and that is inquiring about training opportunities. I was not familiar with the Paladine Center until just a couple of days ago, and I still don't know very much about it. At Oriskany, they offer wonderful programs, but for us in the lower Hudson Valley, that's a day's travel up and a day travel back.
Sure.
Is this facility going to become another Oriskany?
Go ahead.
No, you go first.
You're going to see all of their capabilities today.
I would like to enhance this facility. I've got to figure out how to do that, but I'm sure with the senator's help, we can get creative, and we can try and do something more local. Now, obviously, I'm sure that the town here probably doesn't want you blowing up cars.
Actually, Kenny Schmidt's right here. Kenny, that's okay, right? Yeah, we can.
Oh yeah, we can.
Just not his car.
Well, you'll get the calls, not me. All right. But no, if the town says they can do explosions.
Well, that's another challenge. I know the commissioner talked about training ESU. and obviously ESU uses heavy weapons. They've been thrown out of Camp Smith.
No, but they can use them here.
They can't. Well, that's what we're looking for, because the last I'd heard is many ESU agencies were going to West Point because they could not use a facility in Westchester County. We're looking for a facility that will accommodate all our training needs.
Got it.
And I would just say, to piggyback on what the commissioner just said, I mean, that's our absolute goal. I mean, the reality is that if you look within 50 miles, 60 miles of this region, you're not going to find a higher need for training for first responders anywhere in the country. And if New York City has one thing, it's the most professional first responders that the world knows. And Israel may take a bone with that, but we can bring Israel here. And if you think about the things that we have in our arsenal, back to job creation, economic growth, I mean, this training facility could become an epicenter for folks all across the country and beyond. That's certainly the vision. The governor was extremely helpful, and the lieutenant governor in the first round with the regional economic development councils with supporting this initiative here, and we'll continue to work to make sure that those efforts move forward. And they're doing it on their own. I mean, the great thing from the private sector perspective is that they're moving it forward. They have a product, they have a customer list, and this project's moving forward even before that government help came. So I think that everything's coming together at the right time to make this work. So that's our hope. Keep going. Bob?
I wasn't planning on speaking, but I'm with the Port Authority Police Department. I thank you for the opportunity to be here and your presence, Commissioner, and I hope that you continue with what Senator Ball has started in the Homeland Security. My members who police the most terrorist
I know your guys very well.
in probably the United States, if not the world. With the help of Senator Ball, he's second to none in giving them a little bit of a safer workplace, being equipment and manpower and staffing, and I hope we can continue this relationship, and I'm looking forward to working with both of you.
Well, you've got a great group of folks, despite what Rudy used to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
I remember that. I used to tell the mayor, please stop criticizing. These are a real professional group of police officers. And I've worked with your guys from crashes to Ken Honig was a very close friend of mine. A lot of the cops, Stryker, I mean, I go way back with your guys. You do have a very inviting terrorist target. And we will continue. I meet with Pat Boy on a regular basis. I met with your chief the other day. I'm doing everything I can to try and help the Port Authority.
Thank you.
Sir?
No, I didn't come.
I'm sorry. My name is John Hodges. I'm with the Westchester County Police Department, and I'm also a member of CTZ3, the Tactical Subcommittee. Just wanted to follow up on what Chief Alagno, Commissioner Gardner said regarding the SWAT training standards. I have been involved recently through the CTZ with trying to set up regional training. The standards that DCJS came out with, and I've dealt with Mark Fettinger up at DCJS, they're good standards. It's going to be 140 hours, about a month of basic training, and it comes out to probably 2 days a month for an annual in-service. One of the key issues, I think, regarding the funding is going to be, right now, we do get funding through UASI, through SHSP. We are only allowed to utilize personnel expenses, overtime, backfill, for federally approved courses. Now, this will be an issue. If we could work this out with DCJS, with DHS, to allow us to expend funds for this particular type of course, I think that would go a long way with helping us. We have not talked to anyone right now at DHS. We haven't talked to Tony Pesci because a lot of us are in the process of going through the accreditation. But I know once we commence the training, and that's going to be key, is making that allowance so that we can utilize those funds for
I will follow up on that. I'm not shy about beating DHS up a little here and there. So, Chief, I will follow up on that in detail.
I go back even further than you. In New York City, I was with ESU 20 years. And the big thing that
When
I
were you
see
there?
that's happening here today.
When were you there?
I was there in '61.
Oh, geez.
And
that is
it was a
before my
different
time.
world then. And one of the things that I'm always so happy about lately, everybody shares information. Years ago, you couldn't talk to the fire department. They wouldn't speak to the state. They wouldn't speak to, and it's a whole different ball game today. And I think in that kind of an effort, we all serve to better our safety first, and then the public second. And thank you very much for bringing this together. You can see we're a little town. The state police sitting next to me. We work greatly together.
Which town are you in again?
Town of Somers, Westchester.
Oh, I know. Well, I was at IBM headquarters.
Yeah, that's.
So we dealt with you on the police, fire, EMS on a regular basis.
Yeah. So thank you very much for having us.
Well, thank you, Chief.
Rob Liffland. Just want to thank you for both of you for being such support. What I'm hearing that our first responders need. It's a pleasure to hear that. On my end, as mayor of the village of Pauling, and my first response plan, I'm just wondering, just listening, and on the update of that plan, who do we contact? I mean, I hear a lot of people speaking here, and it comes down on my shoulders on making sure that plan is.
I'm sorry, which plan again?
The emergency response plan for
the
village.
For the county?
For the village of Pauling.
Okay.
And the last time we got it, we really got a good response from the MTA was there to support us, the state police, Dutchess County sheriffs.
So let me try and understand. You need help updating your plan?
Yeah, I need help updating that plan, but also that it would coordinate with other villages in town, that we understand what we do first. You know, who do we call?
Got it.
And like you said before.
If you give me your card,
okay, I'll do that.
I will have Steve Kerr call you.
Like
Steve is the director of CMO.
Okay.
And he will give you whatever support in helping coordinate that and helping you with your plan as you need.
And like you said, God forbid if something happens, we know that they're going to go north. Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah. If you can get me your card, I'll put a note on it, and Steve will have it before the day's over. Thank you.
I'd like to go on record. I only live a half a mile away. I wouldn't be in favor of blowing up cars here.
Well, who was that said it was okay? Talk to him about it.
Well, I'll straighten him out later.
Yeah.
But I'd like to also note on the when we got Homeland Security funds, the sheriff, myself, and the chief from the town of Kent sat down, and we decided to use the funds for pretty much a SWAT team. And the DCJS standards are pretty much high, very high. We presently do about 16 days. We could possibly go up to 18. But the money that we get from, I believe it's the federal government that gets funneled through the state, there's restrictions on the money where you could only pay for 50% could go for personnel.
Right.
And with small departments like ours, we reimburse ourselves a certain amount of money. We'd rather be able to up that. We don't think there should be a restriction on personnel costs. It should be up to us to decide how that's distributed. There's another problem, too, is that with that federal funding, you can't buy munitions or flashbangs. So we have to, the individual police departments have to pay for our members for SWAT training also. So as a small department and in these tough economic times, it's a big onus for us with these federal restrictions. So if you could change that where they would give us carte blanche with the ability to let us decide where the monies go and lift that restriction with regards to ammunition and flashbangs so we could purchase that equipment because you need it for training. And that would help the local agencies.
And you know,
Chief, what was your, I'm sorry.
No,
sorry,
Chris,
go.
you're good.
What was your name again?
Mike Johnson.
All right, Mike. Let me look into it, but you know, some of the problems are that it's federal guidelines that we're living by. But again, you don't get anything if you don't ask. So I'm always willing to call and see how much flexibility I have in allowing you to do it. Because if I have any flexibility, you'll get them. Let me find out.
Thank you.
This is too, when we follow up, it's helpful if we can get letters of support from all the communities suggesting this, because it's something where we can come together as a state and ask for those federal changes, and certainly Congressman King will be helpful on that. But we can communicate officially with all members of Congress, okay?
Hi, Joe Russo again. In discussing the sharing of intelligence and information, being in the private sector now for 8 years, previously 20 years in the Secret Service, previously a New Rochelle police officer. As the chief said, from Somers, my hometown, by the way. Years ago, as we all remember, very few agencies between federal, state, New York City. I spent 17 years in the New York field office of the Secret Service. Very rarely did we share information even within the other federal agencies, FBI, Secret Service, much like the relationship the NYFD had with the NYPD. And we played referee a lot of times during some national special security events, as the commissioner knows. But the point I'm making is that not only has it improved, certainly as we've all recognized in the public sector, but what New York City does, and the FBI actually hosts it, is a continuum between private and public sector. Folks like me who are former law enforcement, many of you here are retired and moved on to other public sector jobs. But what they offer is a sharing of intelligence between the private sector and the public sector. And why is that important? For example, the company I work with now, T&M Protection, has a K-9 division. We have 30 bomb dogs. We do all of the explosive detection at the stock exchange. We sweep 450 vehicles a day down there with 5 dogs full time. Why are we involved? Well, the New York Stock Exchange is probably the #1 target. I think we can all agree, certainly on the levels of certainly a lot of the Port Authority targets. So it's very important from my perspective now being in the public sector, and I think it's something that certainly can lend itself to the upper counties, Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, everything up here. You have all these tremendous corporations, IBM, Somers, Pepsi, IBM up in Poughkeepsie, and running the security for those, usually for those corporations, are normally former law enforcement, former fire prevention folks. And to get them involved more with the public sector to share information and have them work with you. I know locally you have a lot of tabletop exercises. The state police, I'm sure, works with the Somers corporations. But I think even more of a broader spectrum, whereas you can not only tap into what they're doing in there, but don't forget, if something was to happen up here, thousands and thousands of people, public citizens, are sitting in these corporations. So it only behooves us all to know what their evacuation emergency plans are in conjunction with the several agencies where it may fall under. So I'm just encouraging possibly some conversation regarding a public-private sector relationship moving north of the city, sharing information between all the agencies as well as all the corporations.
How many of you here are adjacent to IBM facility or in the area of IBM? 1, 2, oh, good number of you. When I was at IBM, Joe, I had emergency response programs worldwide. One of the things we did, and if you're not getting help from IBM, let me know and I'll squeeze them a little. We gave computers to all the fire and police departments that surrounded our plants. We also did training for all the fire departments on hazardous materials. We gave bomb dogs to local police departments, Endicott, Poughkeepsie, all over the state where we had facilities. And if that's not happening anymore, then IBM's dropping the ball. And I know IBM to be a very good community-oriented company. And if you're not getting that kind of interaction that Joe's talking about, you ought to talk to them, or I ought to talk to them. Let me know, or let the senator know.
That's a phenomenal point. I want to thank you for bringing that. We're going to follow up on that legislatively and otherwise.
Good morning. We're obviously representing the fire side on the career side, but I'm also a volunteer. I didn't say that when I was seeing around the Somers team. I'm a past chief twice in Somers Fire Department, and I'm currently the president. I'm also a county and state fire instructor, so I know Chief Stevens has got some good stuff going on out there. My issue, or our issues, are the travel distances and availabilities of advanced and technical training, as well as national certification stuff on the fire side. We lost a great resource when we had Camp Smith. I understand the reasons why, but we had some great resources down here in the lower Hudson Valley for technical rescue, as well as hazardous materials training, especially advanced training, which locally we get the more basic hazmat stuff. I do operate a hazmat team, and you'll see them in operation in a little while, but we just don't have those availabilities down here anymore, especially with, again, back to the technical rescue stuff, trench, building collapse, confined space rescue. It's limited. As far as advanced training, we have to travel very long distances, obviously, up to our fire academy, state fire academy, to take like advanced instructor, advanced officer training, things like that. And then obviously national certifications, and I know we're moving towards that more, which is a very good thing, to get our firefighters and fire officers national level training or certifications as opposed just to New York.
Yeah, I hear you, and as I said, I will be back here, and I will be meeting with local responders, chiefs, figuring out how we can turn this into something that you guys can utilize at the local level, even blowing up a couple cars.
And we need your testimony in a letter. I mean, and everybody here who can attest to the need to have those resources locally, we need you all to get your name and to really sign that and put that on the record so we have it. I know Sheriff Smith, we got about 15 more minutes.
Don Smith, the Sheriff of Putnam County. Again, I'd like to thank the Commissioner and the Senator for hosting this today. As we're going around the room and we're hearing all these issues being brought up, it reminds me of a meeting we had before Christmas in Albany. We had the New York State Police, the New York Association of Chiefs of Police, and the Sheriff's Association, New York State Sheriff's Association. We all met. And many of these topics came up at that meeting. And this is something that, we did a while ago, and then it kind of dropped off the radar, and we're back doing it again, and we're going to do it on a routine basis. And as I'm sitting here listening to these issues of intelligence sharing, training, ERT, it just came to me that this is a great forum, and we should do this, Senator, quite often. But I think what we really need to do to get a lot of these issues resolved at the state level is to take that meeting that we had in December, and for police issues, that's fine. We need to expand it for fire and EMS. And I think that would be a great forum, Commissioner, for you and the Senator to meet with those associations, working together, hammering out problems.
Agreed.
And let's face it, those associations represent all of us in this room. And so I just wanted to make sure that we don't lose that, and I'm sure that that's part of the plan, is to get to you, Commissioner, Senator Ball, to get to you. But I think that's a great forum on a routine basis where we can address many of these problems. I'd also just like to mention something the Commissioner talked about earlier, and that is we have to make sure we don't forget the counties outside of New York City. Putnam County is a safe county. It's a pristine county. It's very easy to say, Putnam doesn't need any of this money. But when you look at the Madrid scenario, when you look at how Putnam is joined at the hip, and all these counties around here are joined at the hip with New York City, which is ground zero for any future attacks, I believe, we need to make sure that we don't forget the suburbs of New York City. We have the Harlem line going through Patterson and Southeast and Brewster. We have the Hudson Line going through Cold Spring, Garrison, Manitoba. We have road networks. We are really tied to New York City, and I think that's just very, very critical. And just lastly, I think I'm very concerned, and Senator, I think I mentioned this at your hearing, I think it was back in April. I'm concerned about complacency. And back in April, I mentioned, what happens after, each war. We seem to cut the military, and if you've been paying attention to the newspapers the last couple days, we're going to cut the military significantly. I know the troops are home from Iraq, and we're winding down the war, quote unquote, in Afghanistan. But the world is still a very dangerous place. There are people that hate the United States of America. They hate our way of life. They hate the fact that we're the beacon of freedom, hope, and justice throughout the entire world. And so I just think we need to make sure we don't let our guard down. And when it comes to Al-Qaeda, homeland security issues, we need to make sure that as we navigate these tough economic times, that we don't treat all programs the same. The most important thing at the federal government is protecting the homeland, protecting the United States of America. That's in the Constitution. I know Governor Cuomo's done a great job in his first year in office. I know there are going to be some cuts we have to make, but homeland security still needs top priority. All programs should not be created equal. And then I'd also like to reiterate what the chief said. We could really use help. This ERT, emergency response team we have in Putnam County, Chief, I think Lieutenant DiVeneri, it exceeds all of our expectations. We need to make sure we don't put ourselves out of business by raising the standards too high and keeping the funding too low. This team is very professional. It's trained with the FBI. It's trained with teams throughout Westchester County. We appreciate all our help from our big brothers in Westchester. But we need to make sure that we use common sense when we have these mandates and also when we divvy up the funding. So, I just really appreciate what you're doing here today. Please work with those associations in Albany, Senator and Commissioner. I think they can help bring our issues here. They can put some really definitive issues forward so we can get help at the state level. And then lastly, when it comes to blowing up cars at the Paladine Center, Chief, when we were stationed in West Germany years ago, we would be firing tanks on the main gun ranges 24 hours a day. Some of the people didn't like those sounds, and what we told them were those were the sounds of freedom. They were keeping the Russians from coming through the Fulda Gap, the sounds of freedom. So any sounds, Chief, that come here from the Paladine Center, let's just remember, those are the sounds of training. Training is the lifeblood of the military and law enforcement, and those are the sounds of freedom.
Could you give me your home phone? Because when the calls start coming in, I want to make sure that since you okayed it, in all seriousness, you bring up a very good point about complacency. It happens all the time. In 1990, we had an earthquake prediction on the New Madrid Fault. And this guy said we were going to have the same thing that happened in 1811, 1812, which was the worst catastrophic earthquake to ever hit the continental United States. These were horrific. The Mississippi River flowed in reverse. It was felt all over the country. Everybody got earthquake ready. And then a year later, those kits, the preparedness, all went away. Complacency is a real tough issue to overcome. And what we've got to do is keep pushing people to be prepared. It is very difficult to keep Congress focused on these issues. Fortunately, we've got Pete King. But to keep members of Congress, and I've dealt with this for 20 years now with Congress, it is very difficult to keep them focused on this issue. Unlike the Weathermen, unlike the Black Liberation Army, unlike the other terrorist groups that were politically based back in the 70s and 80s, Al-Qaeda's not going away. It's just going to morph into different forms as time goes on. It's going to be in Somalia. It's going to be in Yemen. They're going to train in these countries, and they're not going away. They may take a different form. They may have a different name, but we have to be vigilant as we move forward. And any notion that this threat is going to be over at any point because we killed bin Laden or because we're done in Iraq or Afghanistan, it's not. And I agree with your complacency, with your issue of complacency. It's a huge challenge. I've yet to find, though, a solution for getting the members of Congress back on the table or at the table to focus on this. They move on to what's happening today, not what happened yesterday. So the senator can be very helpful with that. I keep pushing. I go down there on a regular basis to talk to staffers, to talk to members. But, you know, their focus is very narrow, and it's a real challenge. I agree with you completely.
Okay, we have time for one more question, Sheriff. We're going to follow up with your office to make sure that we set up that meeting. We can either do it locally or we do it in Albany, but get us a date. I know the commissioner will be there, and I'd be honored to be there. Okay, so let's set that up.
I will be there.
Senator, let me just touch on a part-time department problem. First, on behalf of Chief Howley, I thank you for inviting us. We have 14 members in our force. We serve in large part as supporting the Somers Barracks, handling many of the calls that aren't the most serious, but certainly that people need us to respond, that there's not the staffing to respond to. Of our last 10 hirees, who all retired from other agencies, NYPD, the State Police, White Plains. It served the town of North Salem very well. We don't have to have the training costs, although the county does a great job down at the police academy. The downside is the pension cap. Okay, we can only work up to a point, and then we have to stop working. This year, if we had one more disaster, I don't think anyone would be able to answer the phone. The chief had to cancel patrols in December because we were running out of police officers who hadn't used up their time. If there's any way to raise that cap, it would open up more bodies to our town, really at no cost other than the operating cost.
Okay. Bill?
Commissioner, again, Billy Stavisky, the Troopers PBA. Senator, thank you very much for everything. Just one thing I want to ask the Commissioner is what direct involvement can you get to try to get funding, especially for all our departments who are so, we're losing manpower because of attrition mostly, and we're not replacing them. The state police is down probably almost 400 members. We haven't had a class in years now, since 2008. I'm sure all the other departments are the same thing. We're not hiring new people. What direct action will you be able to do for us as far as going to budget, advocating for the needs for law enforcement, fire, and everything else to be funded?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I go to the IACP meetings. I've been a member of the IACP for a long while. This is a common thread, particularly as the federal funding for the different programs decreases. I have to talk to Joe D'Amico, and he and I jointly have to figure out a strategy. But as you heard earlier, I also need to talk with the senator, with the sheriffs, and with the New York State Police chiefs, or the New York chiefs of police, because we need to do this uniformly. We need to do this as a group, because the more people involved in going to budget, the more people involved. I can go to budget, and I will. The problem is we are seeing this real contraction of federal funds. And those federal funds used to underwrite a lot of the law enforcement personnel. Over time, it's going away. And it's a real problem for first responders uniformly across the board. And I can assure you, I will talk with the governor about it. I want to talk with Joe, because Joe has his finger on the pulse more of law enforcement. I rely on Jim Horton, I rely on Dan, and I rely on Lou. But it's a problem that I'm not sure I know the correct resolution for at this point, because it is so dependent on so many of the federal dollars.
But as long as we can have your assurances that when and if we need to call on you to say, hey, look, you know, we need someone to go to budget besides our superintendent, besides the president of our union, we need someone to go to budget and say, look, we need this funding for whatever department it may be, the issues that they have. I mean, we can count on you for that.
Yeah, I will be in lockstep with Joe. Joe and I have a good relationship. We talk on a regular basis. And if we need to go to budget, Joe and I will do it in harmony. He's a great guy. He wants to support local law enforcement. He's done a great job with the state police. I think he's a great superintendent. And I will ensure that he and I are in lockstep as we move forward on these issues. I will talk with Joe and let him know your concerns.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to ask a question. On behalf of the Senators Advisory Council, I know a lot of you have a lot of questions, probably didn't get around to you. By all means, it's very important that you take the time, forward your concerns to the Senator's office. The committee will sit down, we'll review them, we'll sit down with the Senator, and please take your time, articulate your thoughts, and I can assure you every single letter will be read in detail. If there's any questions, someone from the Senator or the Senator directly will reach out to you. All right, so don't think that you were passed by here. Unfortunately, we could do Q&A for 8 hours, and we don't have 8 hours to do that, unfortunately. So make sure you send your letters in. Thank you very much.
And just to follow up on that point, okay, a couple things. One is, as a follow-up to this meeting, make sure we have all your contact information, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to take all your personal questions. The commissioner will give us his personal email address, and then we're going to follow up individually. But I have a list of deliverables. We will do a follow-up meeting, and beyond that, to go to Billy's comments, I think on the funding issue, I think, in my opinion, as a state, we have got to really come together across all agencies, all parties, and all levels to make a very clear statement as a state that for national security, not only New York State Homeland Security, but for national security reasons, we need to ensure that we get the fair share of funding from the federal level. No, that's fine. That comment has not, that statement has not been made from a statewide effort ever. I think that one thing that we could do is conduct a series of joint hearings where we work together to kind of go into and drill into some of the needs of all the different agencies and focus specifically on the need for funding and the need for federal funding. One of the things I have seen when it came to the Port Authority and other agencies, when we started to talk about, well, there's a problem with operability and interoperability, it immediately became a management versus union issue. A lack of funding has caused that. A lack of funding and prioritization from the federal government has caused that. It should never be, as a state, we should never view it as a management versus union issue, especially when it is a funding issue. So we have got to bridge that divide and make sure that if we could hold an extremely constructive hearing where we say, look, we're here as a state. We're here as law enforcement personnel. We're here as first responders. There are real needs in New York State to secure the underbelly from a national security issue. Because if it devolves into a management versus union issue, we've lost the battle. That means the federal government runs because we're pointing fingers at each other. So maybe we can follow up with a series of hearings. We'll follow up. The commissioner said he'll come back here with another series of meetings. But if we could follow up on that hearing, I think that would be successful. So,
and I think for any of the union officials that are here, you will get support from us because we want our departments to be fully funded. I mean, we want them to be able to provide the services for our membership as well as for the public and the safety of everyone. So it's I think you're going to have cooperation. I know with our superintendent D'Amico, there's no question that he is in concert with us in requesting budget to fund a class for this year so we can get some kind of replacements. And I think that you'll find that through all the departments, all the chiefs will find that with all their associations that work for them. So I think you won't have to worry about that being an issue at all.
Okay, so follow up.
No, I was just going to say on the law enforcement issues, Jim Horton is my point of contact. He works with Dan. Jim, do you want to give them your phone number?
Sure. It's area code 518-242-5081. And I just want to add that you guys hit on a lot of points. We hear this all over the state. We go Buffalo, we go to the North Country, we got the border. My responsibility is to all over 550 police departments in the state, all the fire and EMS. And the public safety unit is comprised of, I come from the operational side of the world, as do everybody in that unit. We get it. I'm a bean counter now. I get that. But I came from you guys. So the operational side of me, the ESD commissioner, the sheriff, I understand that. It's like an unfunded mandate. We can deal with Sean Byrne, the acting commissioner of DCJS. We'd be happy to. And the sheriff hit the nail on the head. It was the only time I heard this word, or these two words put together, common sense. We can add common sense to it. The commissioner is put it on his desk, get it off his desk. Same with me. I don't want anything. I'm not going to wait for a decision. We're going to make decisions.
On the DCJS issue, I am going to set up a meeting with the commissioner, and I'm going to bring Dan and Jim with me, and we are going to figure out how to address the ERT team issue.
I know that we're running over. I just want to point out, that issue about the end strength of New York State Police was raised at that meeting with the sheriffs and the chiefs of police and the superintendent and his staff. And that is a critical issue because we depend, in our overall county footprints, we depend on local police departments and them being fully staffed. We depend on the state police. Luckily, we've been fortunate to not feel the loss of that support, but if a class doesn't happen soon, it's going to start to impact here. Every time there's a problem in the state, problem in New York City, troopers are pulled. They're put on trains, they're moved. And it's a part of our over-policing plan. And when you have an organization that's up about 5,000 and it's heading down to 4,000 for the entire state of New York, when you have, on its best day, I think New York City was up around 40,000 for the boroughs of New York City. It's a scary thought that we're letting the end strength of the New York State Police get so low, and I would hope we would address it very, very soon, Commissioner and Senator. And you have the support of the sheriffs and the police chiefs on this issue. We're not in competition. We're partners working together, and we depend on each other.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for that.
One last question.
Thank you, Senator. Commissioner, thank you. On behalf of the Commissioner of Emergency Services, Robert McMahon, welcome. On behalf of the volunteer firemen, EMS in the room, I know most of these guys, I know they come here with some items. They'll address them to you. Welcome. We look forward to meeting with you again. A couple of items that were brought up, as the sheriff had mentioned, complacency, the sense of our public for entitlement. We're struggling with that. I welcome your offer of shelter supplies. We need assistance in having the manpower to deploy that as well. Again, county, all volunteer, fire and EMS. So we will definitely follow up. Chief Stevens has supported our office, the Bureau of Health, Department of Health, Bureau of EMS, supports our volunteer EMTs with our county provider, TransCare. But thank you, and on behalf of Commissioner McMahon and the men and women at Putnam County Fire Service, thank you.
I want to thank everybody. I know Jim will tell us where we're going next, but there's been a request to get a photo with the commissioner. So if everybody wants to come forward, we'll get a photo right here, and then we'll head to our next part. So come on forward.